and gets people more comfortable talking about it and educating. One last little thing, I went to this book signing on this Boise college student who went around the country and interviewed homeless people. It's called 50 Sandwiches, and bought them lunch and talked to 50 different people around the country. And I went to the talk by myself, and there was a lot of people in the audience, and he did a Q&A afterwards, and it was probably at that moment I realized it isn't that people don't want to help, they just don't know how to help. They're scared, they don't know how to approach someone that's homeless. Some of the questions I was able to almost answer on my own because my son was homeless on the streets a lot, and just being there and helping this college student, being able to raise my hand, and the little things that can make a huge difference. Toiletry bags, socks. I have a sock collection called Happy Feet at my store where we collect socks and give to the homeless, and everyone's always really excited to get their socks. So it's just little things you can do that can really help start breaking down and helping people.
Yeah, no, that's why. Thank you. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, hey, so I want to talk about some individual works. And Scott, I know you have some, and that we were going to put up on the screen and talk about some individual pieces of art. And
I'll do that real quick. I don't want to take everyone's space, but I don't want paintings. But there's a few that are real pertinent.
Yeah.
I'd like to see. So we'll see if this works. And I wanted to talk about, most of the paintings I went through are storytelling paintings, because that's kind of what as far as a lot of this is what I contribute as for the loved ones of those that suffer from schizophrenia, as opposed, because they carry a lot too. And so this painting, I'll just start with one that's up real quick. This painting's called Ethan's Kisses, and some of you got a brochure. So you read kind of what was the thinking. Oh, thanks. So some of you read what Ethan's Kisses, the larger picture of what that was, Ethan, and you probably all read it. So what my vision is for the hummingbirds is to bring hope, but as Justine mentioned, sometimes it's when you get visited by hummingbird, and I believe this, I've had lots of visitations by hummingbirds, especially since I started this. But there can be a sign that you're doing okay. And again, I'm talking kind of about family members of those that suffer. It can let you know you're supported in life's issues, and it can also be a visit from a loved one from the other side. I'll just say that. I really believe that. But everyone might have a different concept of what a hummingbird visitation might mean. But my hope is with these paintings is they, for example, if you see a loved one, if it's a visitation for a loved one, we're marrying again, that pain of losing someone or walking with someone in that situation with hope and encouragement. And these guys all said, talking about getting past the stigma, that was the first thing on my thing, but if these paintings can lead us into that conversation where we're okay with talking about this, and if hummingbird paintings help facilitate that, I'm all about it. But, so they've also been a good springboard for other, I think Jim kind of touched on conceptual horizons for me. And I might add, I don't know if any of you have been to Israel, but there's a museum there. It's the Holocaust Museum, and it's called Yad Vashem, if I pronounce that right. In one of the rooms, the whole room is filled with butterflies. It's really crazy when you walk in there, and it represents ones they lost. And I kind of have a vision, not just ones people we lost, but also ones that suffer. So getting past that stigma and having those hard, being able to talk about it and not sweeping it under the rug. Because it's a hard thing to talk about. So I'm hoping to bring those two together. So I don't know how interested in being my personal but they've also been a pilgrimage for me. They're just amused to go into to improvise, and that takes you, when we paint, some of you guys probably relate to this, it's like making music. Music is one of the most non-material art forms there is. And, when we do it, we don't think about what we're doing. As I understand, musicians don't think about trying to imitate nature. So there's that direct connection with that realm that I think Jim was talking about, that I heard in some of your other comments that bring us healing and take us on to another place. So that's my goal with the hummingbird. So those have morphed from this whole story of telling the story, and it's healing for me to do it.
Should we look at some other?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even take it. Thank you, Rose. I'll just whip through some hummingbirds. This orange hummingbird, Ethan, was known for this fluorescent orange coat he wore. So I was thinking about Ethan when I painted this. And then I want to share again. This is, as you probably saw, if you really looked at it, it's kind of the story of what happened in Spokane. And there's a lot of symbology in there. There's a whole group of people looking on, which we all do. We all rubberneck to see these things going on, but we don't know how to participate. Voices, Justine, her son in the policeman's background. And that's a hopeful painting called Okay, of Justin, or of Ethan. And these are some of my son's paintings. I just want to show you real quick. This guy painted these he did when he was in his 20s. And he's still selling paintings that were in galleries. But he can't even go there anymore. But I just thought it'd be interesting for you to see. So I guess why I'm showing these is because a lot of folks that get this brain disorder are really talented people. And they're not, and I just wanted to share this about this disorder too, which again is a brain disorder. It isn't caused by bad parenting. It isn't caused by, alcohol use, although a lot of us self-medicate to deal with the symptoms. And those are some of the things. Maybe I should wait and share about that and another thing, but they're not demonic oppression. You still hear that today. They used to burn folks with as witches for epileptic seizures. So that's a stigma that I'm going to get past when it comes to schizophrenia. And thank you. Those are the only issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks. Jim, you talked a bit about your work. I'm wondering. I'm just gonna pick on a couple of you in the crowd here. A couple of our artists. Jesse Eastburn has a painting called Suicide Note. And hey, Mike, do you think when you get this ready to go live, can we put in images from the artist too? Is there a way that we could do that?
Yeah, we can try that.
Yeah, because you weren't going to go to sleep tonight, right?
No, not at all.
Good, you're a champ. So Jesse has a painting called Suicide Note, and boy, I fell in love with this painting just from the image you sent me. It's created by using different colored graffiti marker droppers and pens and different hand styles. Each hand style and color represents a veteran I knew personally who took his own life. As I painted, I thought, what did they say? And why did they believe the world would be better off without them? I explored what was going on through the heads of many of my military friends I've lost to suicide, and I just kept writing off the top of my head while exploring my own demons, turning the canvas and writing. camouflaging the words with more words. I felt most of us tend to do this currently. We cover up our mental illnesses with more words and dark humor and the universal "I'm fine." I love that. Let me see. James is sitting right here. On February 3rd, 2018, I suffered a severe neck injury and minor head injury from an equestrian accident requiring immediate emergency surgery and months-long recovery at home. I paint from the inside out, a practice which allows me to outwardly communicate my inner life. Everything I internalize, the experiences I have, the people in my life, my hopes and dreams, my faith are all reflected from heart, mind, and soul through the prism of my intuitive lenses, resulting in artistic expressions, utilizing a variety of media. You know, Jim, you talk to a lot of veterans, Sarah. You talk to a lot of veterans. I'm wondering if you can kind of expand on that, Jim, with your own work as well. I think there's a lot of, here's what I want to say. There's a lot of heaviness, there's a lot of stuff that we all carry around. Certainly the older we get, it seems the more baggage we sort of pile on, and that "I'm fine," is what we all say. And I'm wondering, in your experience, what has been a really positive catalyst that you've seen? And the art, of course, but when you're gathering people and when you're working with people, what are some of the real positive catalysts? What helps?
In a broad sense, if you're using a broad brush, we all suffer from mental illness at one point or another. And it might occur as depression. That depression comes and goes. Anger comes and goes. We're all in the same boat. We've all got to work on it. It just depends on which way you're paddling. But I think a lot of times when it comes to mental health issues, they go over the fence, if you will. It's trying to get that person, that individual, to think forward instead of being stuck, and to move instead of being stuck. And I think sometimes a lot of that comes down to a tagline. I mean, do you have a tagline in your life? Seriously, what moves you forward when you've got a problem? I wrote a tagline for myself many years ago. It's on every wall in my studio. It says, "A man with a vision is never truly blind." What's your tagline? Have you thought about creating one to move you forward? Try it. And the veteran artists that I work with all the time, in our conversations, I can see reflections, little bits and pieces. They have a tagline, no matter where they are in their problems. Could be PTSD, could be anger issues, could be depression. But no matter where they are, I can see that light that maybe they haven't put together in a statement, but I pick up little pieces of it. And those are the pieces that I try to encourage them to focus on. Because that's going to move you forward. When you're stuck in one attitude, you're stuck. I mean, and you've got to figure out a way to get through that and move forward. I think about when I lost my eyesight, I thought there was nothing left. Wow. You don't know what the future's going to bring. Things are difficult now. But there's always that one guarantee in life, and that's change. Things will change. But you've got to focus on what's going to get you there. And that can be difficult if you're stuck in one place and you're not even trying to think about it. That's where an external push helps. That's where someone outside yourself can help you move forward. Maybe it's talking to me, maybe it's talking to Jesse, my assistant director, or maybe it's talking to one of the other artists. But it's someone outside yourself that actually bumps you forward, because you're stuck in that spot. So, talking to people actually works.
Sarah, what have you seen?
I love that. I love the tagline. I need to think of it myself. But I was going to go in the direction too of the social interactions. I think the socialization and talking to people is just that support, right? And not only can you say, "Look what I did. This is what I'm doing," but when you're having challenges, you can say, "I'm really struggling right now. I really need that help and that support." And to have someone that is either going through the same thing you're going through or understands your challenges, and the more you talk about it, the more support you can get and the more support that you need. Because you can have support from anybody to talk to, but if you find that small group of people that can really relate and understand, that's when I see the biggest growth, which is why we do a lot of groups. We do one-on-ones, but a lot of what we do are groups, specifically so they can find those interactions in that social getting involved in the community, finding the BMW, the nerd. Yeah, and starting small, I think that's another thing. Some people get these big, grandiose ideas. I want to be here. Okay, well, let's skip baby steps. Because when you take too big of steps, you might not be able to leap that far right away. But if you start to take small steps, build those muscles, and you can get bigger and bigger and bigger and eventually get there. And I think that's a big thing too, is just start small. Small steps forward.
Well, it also seems too, if you set yourself up with this huge leap, are you actually setting yourself up to fail? And say, "See, I told you I couldn't do it." Right?
Yeah, right. And then you have those personal defeats where, "Yeah, see, I told you I couldn't do it." "Oh, no, yeah, you can. And let's take baby steps." And then you have the person there to support you, or people. Groups.
Right. Well, that's the nice thing about art too, is that you start with a vision of what you want it to be. When I'm writing, I start with this concept, and then I just fight it the whole way through, and it doesn't become what I wanted it to, or I can just let it become what it is, and I'm kind of along for the ride. And it's probably that way with your art too, right? Like you start with something, and then, well, where did that just go? I think that creating art is of any kind really is that thing, Jim, that you were saying, that you get out of the mental space and move forward. And Scott, I'm gonna kind of pull this back to you too, because I know you are talking about your son and we're talking about Ethan, but you struggle as well with your own things, and I'm sure you and Shelley, your wife, this is like as a team trying to, you bring kids into the world, and one day you think they're going to zig and they zag, and then you're like, well, so I mean, maybe talk about you a little bit. I'd love to also check in with all of you and find out where you are right now. Where are you right now, Scott? Would you use that microphone first? Yeah. Mr. Shine.
So thanks, Rose. So, yeah, I wasn't going to mention this, but I've actually been diagnosed with bipolar, and I can share that I take a medication that I don't notice unless I don't take it. But also I'm involved in a program where I have a high power, and that's where I get a lot of my. If I had a tagline, it'd be "There is a God and I'm not it."
They're busy guy,
So that goes a long way. You know, I say along with that, this specific program, what was I say, it's coined as a program for living, and it truly has been. And our experience with our son and with the help of this program and other folks, I've learned to become more human, which is something that we're not all born with, apparently. And I think that's really important, and I think that's the level where we're coming here tonight. So my wife is obviously very supportive. We've had lots of adventures. I did want to say one thing about, two other things real quick, about the hummingbirds, and that's what we're doing here tonight. I think hummingbirds are cross-pollinators also. So I think that's kind of what we're doing here tonight as well. And I want to share a story real quick. It's just kind of like the final question.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a big deal. So my wife and I were living in a pretty isolated place in the middle of Idaho, and our son really went through this. And really was diagnosed with it and was off in, the state hospital and in jail, and we almost lost him a number of times. We felt super isolated. I just want to share how much a little empathy, how far a little empathy will go. We went to Sandpoint, Idaho to go to an annual meeting, and we went to the meeting and it was good. We met some people. Then we went to a restaurant, and when we were leaving, said someone paid your bill. And it turned out that Justine here, we didn't know had paid our bill. But for whatever reason, that went a long way. We made instantly had a connection with someone that had someone else. And in the meantime, a lot of things happened in her life, so we weren't reacquainted again until we moved to Sandpoint, Idaho. But I guess, what I'm trying to say is that and also getting knowledge about the empathy goes a long way. And the third thing that really helped us was getting some knowledge about the illness, which is a brain disorder, which for those of us that have kids, that we tend to blame ourselves, and we go through a lot of misery trying to figure out what we did wrong, and we make mistakes, but it doesn't explain that. And some science is getting closer to helping us explain that. So, again, being here is just doing the next thing. Thanks, Rose.
Can I, hey Scott?
Yeah,
Can
please, it's my wife's show.
One
She
thing-
helps me fill in the gaps a lot.
So, one thing I think.
Just so it gets recorded.
All right, yeah. So, one thing, Scott, his first language is painting. And so he doesn't always articulate everything and bring everything out. He just says it. But I think one of the things that he and I have both been about is just wanting to bring awareness and to find more resources. Because I hear what you guys are doing, with the veterans, and it's so good, and it's such an awesome thing. And yet with the schizophrenia and those things, those are not people that recover easily, and we don't have resources available for people. And you can tell that just by looking around at any city, and it's not only schizophrenia, it's addiction, it's a lot of stuff. And that's kind of what our thing has been about, and probably why you wanted to do this show, right? Was to bring awareness to that. And we're just hoping that, we can spread it all around, right? So,
Yeah.
anyway,
I think,
thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
So, I want to hear from our other panelists too, but I also want to ask if any of you have anything to say, and if you have any questions. And
and just to kind of keep this final question going, you know, for so many people, when, say, you lose a loved one or something, and you know, or if there's some natural disaster or whatever, and people always say, oh, my thoughts and prayers are with you, and it just has become kind of this cliche, and you know, and I think it's just really perfect what you said, that someone paid your meal, and that was empathy, and you made a friend, and that was exactly what you needed in that moment. And I'm wondering, like, would you, if any of you would mind just sharing, like, what are some of those things? Because a big part of what I was hoping to do this evening is to give some of that information out. What really helps? What doesn't help? What really helps? You know, does it help just to go sit with somebody? Does it help? But you know, does asking questions help? Does just being quiet help? Does just what helps? What's that empathy piece that you would like to tell people, that you would like to explain?
For me to kind of forget about the demons that I might have, I try to address the demons that other people have. And that's one of the ways that I'm able to move away from that space and think about how others are affected by all these mental health issues. And so for me, it's that dialogue with my art that I'm addressing the feelings of other people, especially people that I know, like my relatives and friends. And so it's just a way for me to escape my own problems and addressing theirs. And I do that through my art.
Yeah. Do you have?
No, I didn't. I was just acknowledging my friend.
Pretty much I've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and pretty much art just helps me, you know, just put paint on canvas.
Well, I'm dealing with a couple of things. One is chronic pain, which I'm kind of going through at this point. And I think the VA for helping me out through the process. And another thing is that being a person of color, and from where I've been growing up in underdeveloped communities, and there are some times where people don't have access to like a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a consultant, and they rely on, like, say, for example, pastors in the church with a religion. And yet sometimes that is not enough. And me being an illustrator, I'm using my art to use characters to tell a story as how people cope with their situation if they don't have access. And that's kind of like my lifelong goal, but it will be more of like in the science fiction, fantasy theme. So I can also collect stories and maybe not just put people out there, but I can tell it in a fictional way, so it will be more intense. It might not make sense to some people, but it will help some. It will make sense to someone.
It'll connect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just say something about, in respect to what I observed? The people that I know, that I've met in this room, every single one of you have really an importance to me. You really do. You matter. And don't let yourself think that you don't. You matter. You matter to me. And I've made relationships and friendships that will last me the rest of my life. stuck in place, when the car's stuck, you push it. Figure out what you need to get that push. Whether it's talking to someone else, talking to a professional, or maybe just say to yourself, I'm being stupid right now. I gotta stop this and move forward. Maybe it's you that has to say something to yourself. But either way, it doesn't make any difference. You are all important. Seriously.
I would echo that. This is I feel like I've really made friends with them. I love you guys. You have something.
Well, going back to your earlier question about what helps, when there was a mental health crisis in my immediate family, we didn't know what to do, and bankruptcies in jail, and in a manic episode for a loved one, and so having other people tell us their stories, so reaching out to NAMI, that National Association of Mental, and having people call because you're sick, and that was worth so much in our time of crisis. So I'd say that reaching out one-on-one, so congratulations for this great program tonight and all of us here.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes, I would love to. Who else would like to? I'd love to. Anybody else? Questions too? Questions or comments? Anybody else? Mike. You're allowed to talk.
I have a question. Jim, I was fascinated by your explanation on, how your art puts you in a different place. It reminds me a lot of meditation and being in the present moment. And I'm wondering, do you get that when you're just doing the art, or when you look back on the art you've done, brings you back to that present moment?
Well, sometimes you don't want to notice, maybe, but sometimes I throw the art across the room because I'm disgusted with it. So yeah, it's not all peaches and cream, and I think sometimes I make mistakes, and it can be frustrating. But when I think when an artist is in the flow, let me put it that way, you're open to anything that sort of comes into that moment. Your thoughts tend to wander because your focus is elsewhere. How you develop that, maybe it's different for everyone, but I tend to I think about things as I'm working, and there are things that I probably wouldn't ponder on, I wouldn't meditate on. So maybe in a way it is, in that respect, a bit of meditation. But I'm not sitting there going, I'm conscious of the things going on in my head, and